Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the December 15th regular board meeting. Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Coates?
Here.
Mrs. Horn?
Here.
Mr. Manley?
Here.
Mrs. Mooring?
Here.
Mrs. Pickle-Antonio?
Here. If you will all please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Is there a motion to approve minutes from the November 15th Finance and Facility Committee meeting and the November 17th regular board meeting? So moved. Thanks, Mrs. Coates. Any changes or corrections to those minutes at all? Oh, that would help. Is there a second? That would help. Thank you, Mrs. Mooring. I think we have a second for Mrs. Mooring. Any changes or corrections to the minutes? We will fly through this agenda if I keep at it. Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Pickle-Antonio?
Yes.
Mrs. Coates?
Yes.
Mrs. Horn?
Yes.
Mr. Manley?
Yes.
Mrs. Mooring?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. We are going to begin with our school and community reports and presentations. And to start, I think I saw Mr. Dingle out there. I know Mr. Seabriak is not able to be here tonight. Do you want to introduce students? Okay, that would be wonderful. You don't need to do anything to the microphone. It's already set and ready to go. In fact, please don't do anything to the microphone.
Please don't touch anything.
Thank you.
I will not look at it. Each spring, students can audition to be in the All-State Orchestra, All-State Band, and All-State Choir, and we have a number of students this year representing Gahanna. In January, I believe, right? I'm pretty sure, is the Ohio State Music Education Association Conference in Columbus this year at the Convention Center, and this year we have 4 students representing our district in those top ensembles, so we can have those students come up. Philip Bautrin, Henry Colbert, and Nicholas Ritchie from band, and they'll be, actually, I'm so sorry, Henry, Nicholas, what instrument do you play? Clarinet, percussion, and saxophone represented. And then also, as a member of the All-State Orchestra, is Natalie Fry for the double bass. And these are the top ensembles in the state, representing students from all over Ohio and musical excellence. And so I just wanted to honor them tonight for their achievement. So thank you very much. Be sure to share with the board the performance times of those ensembles shortly. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dingle. I want to extend a congratulations to each of you. That's an amazing achievement. And while we're talking about music, I also want to take this opportunity to thank our marching band for extending their season this year, and our cheer squad and our football players who all, because of the historic accomplishments of our football team, gave us some extra time this year. We just want to make sure that you know how much we appreciate all of you and how proud we are of you. Our board sent letters of commendation to the band, to the cheer team, and to the football team. to congratulate them on, like I said, historic accomplishments this season. I believe that those letters were presented to students and families at their end of season banquets, but hopefully you've received them in some way. We are all very proud of all of you, and also want to say thank you to staff who dedicated their time and energy toward all of these students, and to the parents who supported all of those accomplishments. So thank you. Next, we have our Student Council President, Blake Briel.
Hello, everyone. After much anticipation and planning, Student Council will be hosting our Gahanathon event on January 14th. As I've stated previously, Gahanathon is our branch of OSU's Buckeye-thon event, which is a massive fundraiser for pediatric cancer research and care, which raises over $1 million every single year. In the past, the event has centered around a teachers versus students basketball game, but this year we have made the decision to switch gears and push forward with the dodgeball tournament instead. Despite immediate connotations, dodgeball was decided to have a much lighter physical element, allowing for a much broader array of the student body to be included, and thus pull together more of Gahanna. Additionally, dodgeball shines with teachers because it creates a true barrier between students and other students, as well as students and teachers, to eliminate any potential problems that may arise. We currently have 13 official student teams and multiple teacher teams putting together. However, there's room if, the board or another group, wanted to get involved. There's always room for more teams, pull more people together. Gahanathon, along with dodgeball, Gahanathon's going to work with a multitude of other clubs at the high school to all run different booths that will have activities and games for either families, kids, or anyone else in Gahanna who wants to come and watch. Community members are invited to come and support the cause by either watching the dodgeball tournament or helping out and participating in any activities at the event. There's been a real true energy amongst the student body surrounding our first Gahanathon since my freshman year. The vast majority of the students at the high school and in the entire community have never experienced the event before because of COVID and whatnot. However, I, for one, am very, very excited because I remember my freshman year. It was one of the big highlights of my year. It was a lot of really exciting, and it's all for a really good cause. And there's been a shared excitement amongst everybody else, and so I've really tried to pull everybody together, and I think it's going to be a really successful event. In other news, we have been able to successfully close out the semester by allowing each of our year-long committees to begin planning their initiatives for the next semester. So I'll be excited to see what they take on, and hopefully I can be up here sharing their accomplishments. Finally, on January 25th, we'll be organizing a second Den Day for the year with the stated goal of allowing students to find their pride at the high school. Den Day, as we had earlier, I believe in September, was basically a club fair where students during their lunch periods could come in and see all the clubs, organizations, and activities that are available to them, so students can come and see how they can get involved as much as possible. Before, we had about 30 clubs, and right now we are working to get as many more as we possibly can, because really, as I said up here multiple times, I want my big goal for this year to really have every student find their family at the high school and in Gahanna, whether it's a sport, music, club, or even just like a really close group of friends who share a common interest. I think that there's a lot of power that it gets involved with people just becoming more involved at the high school, and I want to see that get pushed a lot more this year. I'm going to continue to campaign that every single student finds that family, as I said, club, sport, music, anything else, art that they were interested in, so that everyone can feel that they belong and find some shared passion or hobby that they can take with them beyond high school. As I said before, with Gahanathon and with that, I am more than willing to work with anybody who wants to work with me, because I think that pulling more of Gahanna together as possible is the best way to push and accomplish all of our common goals. So thank you.
Thank you, Blake. Next, we are going to hear our nutrition annual report from Megan Schweller. Megan.
Alrighty. All right, well, thank you all for letting me come speak to you this is my second time. I am finishing up my first year and a half here at Gahanna, and it's been absolutely amazing. The past couple years have had a lot of twists and turns, but I wouldn't trade it for anything, and I'm very lucky to be here. The food service department did amazing things last year, given all of our crazy circumstances, between food shortages, staffing shortages, and on-the-fly last-minute menu changes. We were actually able to serve a grand total of a little less than 1.1 million meals last year, so it was really, really amazing. We have a really good kitchen staff district-wide that I'm really proud of. Last year, the USDA was able to extend waivers that made school meals free and available to all students regardless of family income. This did wonders by eliminating the red tape that low-income families had to navigate in order to qualify for free or reduced lunch. However, those waivers expired in June of 2022, returning our food service department to pre-pandemic operations for the 22-23 school year. In order to make this transition as easy as possible for families around the district, the department made the decision not to increase the cost of school meals this year. Because meals are no longer universally free, free and reduced applications have been fully reintroduced into our department to allow qualifying families to receive meals either for free or at a reduced price. We get a lot of questions about how free and reduced applications actually work. Formulated and governed by the USDA, the free and reduced applications determines eligibility by evaluating total gross income, total household size, and additional benefits the households receiving from the state, such as the SNAP program or TANF program. All information that we collect on an application is strictly confidential. We don't share it with anybody else, and the status of that application can apply instantly to a student's account after qualifying. So we highly encourage families who believe they may qualify for the program to apply. Not only does qualifying for the program offset the cost of school meals, but it actually also directly helps school buildings across the district gain access to additional academic support and resources to better help our students succeed and thrive. So it's kind of a win-win for families. Through all these changes to the 22-23 school year, our department has pressed forward and has continued to provide access to healthy and nutritious meals to all students. All meals, snacks, a la carte items, drinks, beverages that we provide on a daily basis are Smart Snack compliant, whole grain rich, low in fat, and align with all USDA guidelines and regulations. This year, to help increase our participation, we've added an assortment of different fruits and veggies to our serving lines to give students a better choice of what they would want. We've also started serving edamame for the first time this year, which is a soybean, so we're trying to implement new and different foods for our kids to try, because you never know what you like until you try it. We've also increased the variety of different products our head cooks in our kitchens can order to help keep meals fresh and interesting for students. So instead of the same specific product on the menu every few weeks, they have a different option to kind of switch things up every year. We've actually added additional pizza vendors to Delivered Pizza Friday. So we now have 5 different vendors that are on a rotational basis, which makes it easier for them and makes it more fun for us. It gives a little bit more variety. And then one of my favorites so far is we've implemented a Lions Lunch, which is like a theme day, essentially. So every 4th Wednesday, we have a theme day that we can celebrate with students for certain holidays or events. We get to decorate our kitchens, dress up, play music, really have fun with the kids, and that's one of my favorite things. We actually have our flyer up for January's Lions Lunch, so you'll have to check it out. We've also been promoting our Fill My Tummy Fund quite a bit since the beginning of the school year. Fill My Tummy Fund is a donation-based fund that helps cover costs of negative lunch account balances for students across the district. Donations are very much appreciated if that's something you're considering. Because this first semester is not quite over yet, I've estimated that we have served around 435,000 meals since the beginning of the school year. As a comparison, at the end of first semester last year, we served a little bit under 525,000 meals. And I think that difference of about 90,000 meals is highly due to the transition back to fully paid meals. But even so, our kitchen staff is devoted to our students just as much as they ever were. We're going to continue to raise the bar to provide for our students and have them meals that make them happy, fill their belly, and give them the fuel they need to thrive. So we're doing good things.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Megan.
Yes, thank you very much.
Let's see, next, I don't see Mal Meller here. I don't think so, right? So there's not anybody else here from Local 399, right? Okay, so I'm going to move on to our OPSI President Local from 249, Jerry Moore, who I know is here.
So I'm still kicking around in my head the visual of what a bus driver dodgeball team would look like. And I'm like, what could go wrong, right? So a couple months ago when I was here and spoke and introduced myself and the rest of the drivers, I mentioned that I was a retired firefighter, and one of my favorite descriptions from when I was in the fire service was that we always described ourselves as 200 years of tradition, unimpeded by progress. And I thought we had the corner on that market, and then I went to the bus garage. And the first thing after I got my training was, I know last month Sonia talked to you about route sheets. Well, this is what a route sheet looks like, and it's just pages of left and right turns. And so your first day that you have your license, you get a route. They send you out with a couple of these because this is just one route. Most drivers have 3. They send you out with these, and it's dark like this, and it's raining like this, and you're a sub, and you don't know the streets. You're maybe even not even from Gahanna, and so you're driving this route, looking at this route sheet, trying to follow it, probably with a little flashlight in your teeth because you can't see anything. And I thought, this can't be 2022. And so over the break, what we're going to do is we're going to pull ourselves a little out of the dark ages, and we are going to be getting rid of our route sheets that are in Google Docs. And right now we're duplicating our efforts. We have route sheets that the drivers maintain in Google Docs, and then that information is also supposed to be, the same information is supposed to be in our TransFinder, which is our GPS tracking system. And I say supposed to be because they hardly ever match. Drivers are responsible for making any changes to the route sheets, getting them turned in, and it's just a cumbersome process. It doesn't always happen. So these are going away. We're going strictly to the TransFinder, and drivers will be responsible for getting the information, correct information, any changes to the staff, and that information will then be in the little electronic box that all the buses have. And as a contracted driver, I don't need this. I can drive my route forward, backward, in the dark, in the fog. I don't need this. I know my kids' names. The subs, though, can't. The subs will drive my route today because I'm off. They'll drive somebody else's route tomorrow because they're off. So they're the ones this is really going to help. And it's going to be, I think, a good thing for us to get this information, correct information. One of the first things we had to do was, I guess, like what you would call scrub the data, because, you know, if somebody puts in an address of something circle, maybe they put the word circle, maybe they put CR, well, that's 2 different streets now. So they had to go through and clean all that up first, and then even then when you run a validation, you really probably get 400, 500, 600, 700 names that need to be manually validated then, and the information corrected so that it'll go through the process. So that's how our staff and transportation is going to be spending their 2-week break. Trying to get that all set up and ready to go for when we come back in January, and hopefully, all things going the right way, we'll come back in January, and these will be a thing of the past. Some of our older drivers aren't very happy about this, but technology is not some of their strong suits, but we'll get there. And so that is our update for this month. I wanted to also thank the board. I believe it was last month's agenda. You voted and approved the salvage of 3 school buses. Those buses, at my suggestion, were donated to Mifflin Township Fire Department for training purposes. And coming from that background, you have no idea how valuable it is to have your hands on a school bus to learn where the weak points and the strong points so they can actually tear those buses apart. I hope they never have to in a real live incident, but if there were to be a day that they had to, it's way better to have done it in training first as opposed to in the middle of a dark, cold, morning somewhere. So thank you for that. And then I also wanted to thank you for chipping in for our annual Christmas party tomorrow and invite you all to join us from 12 to 2 at the bus garage. So thank you, and we will see you in January.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you so much. We really appreciate your and Stephanie's window that you give us into what goes on, because that is an area of the district that we really don't get to see and hear. And it's so important for our kids and our families. So thank you. I know these are long days for you to have to come to a meeting.
You know what? We appreciate the opportunity to have a voice. We have always sort of been the building up in the corner of the city that nobody even knows where the buses are parked at night. But so it's nice to have a voice, and it's nice to have been invited to speak. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Jerry. Next, from Gahanna Jefferson Education Association, Joan Miller.
You want me to grab the mic, move it around? Just kidding. Hello. I will make mine short today. Oh, Jerry left. I just wanted to say, when I was still at South, I was a member of the teacher dodgeball team and somehow ended up being last man standing, and it was not fun. And I basically brokered a deal with the boy on the other side that if he just hit me very lightly, I would lose and the 8th grade team would win, and everything went fine. So I hope, good luck. I think we had a teacher break an ankle and break a wrist. So we were a tiny bit competitive on the teacher side, but I'm sure you'll have lots of fun. Yeah, you guys will be fine. Just take one off the back real quick to get out. That's my advice to all of you.
I was going to say, Joan, you need to teach us, come to practices with us.
It was literally just like me running around with the ball in my hands, like, please don't hurt me, until I got out. And then everybody was mad because I lost, but that's okay. I was still alive. So tonight I just wanted to update you on a few things that are going on in GJA. Saturday, December 3rd was our OEA representative assembly. So myself and 7 other teachers went. It was a fabulous morning. We didn't have a lot of action because we have 2 RAs a year, and our fall one tends to be more informative of nature. But one of the highlights of the day was they had a panel that was able to come and talk about just the intersectionality of a lot of the things that are floating around at the State House and statewide. So the president of the Ohio NAACP, one of the directors of Honesty for Ohio Education, one of the directors from the League of Women Voters, and then the Organizing Collaborative, one of their directors came and talked, and it was really informative, and we enjoyed that. We collected money yesterday for Grin. I am happy to tell you right now, we are right now, as of tonight, at $9,133. However, yes, that's we're going to get to 10 though. That is my belief. We still have a few buildings where I'm going around tomorrow to pick up money. We had I do want to shout out High Point. High Point had 100% of their staff donate. And then I had 3 other buildings, I believe with 80%. I'll have to go back and look. So I will bring that to the February meeting. And most importantly, we have some very excited elementary and preschool teachers who are going to get their duties covered by some from central office after the first of the year. That was part of the incentive that we created. So they're very excited for recess duty in the middle of January to be covered by some from central office.
Joan, I like it because I can wear tennis shoes those days.
Yes. So we were really excited with that number. We obviously wanted to be more, but we know how incredibly important Grin is to our families. I think that it's been really important for all of our buildings to understand the impact it has on Grin, and that all of children in every single elementary, middle school, and high school benefit from the work that Grin does, from lunches on the weekend to back to school book bags, and or just food scarcity issues daily for their families. So we're really excited. Hopefully tomorrow I'll be able to text Tracy after I drive around Gahanna in the afternoon that we are close to 10,000. That was our goal. So I think last year we were right at 10. In previous years we've been right around there too. So that's all I have for tonight. Okay.
Next, from Gahanna Jefferson Education Association, I see Diana Bessiano and not Trish Twig.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it very much. Trish and I are in full gala mode right now. So we are accepting auction item donations, money. So anybody out there with a business that wants to maybe feature their product, we will have a silent auction for 1 week, which will be online, which will feature the name of your company, and people will be bidding on that. So accepting that, we're accepting donations from our Amazon wish list, and you can find that on our GJEF site. And we have had a lot of nice gifts come in from our Amazon wish list, but we still need more, please. We have a special button on our website to go right to the Amazon wish list. We're also accepting reservations for the actual gala itself, which is February the 25th. So we're accepting individual reservations as well as corporate table reservations, and we do have a few of those, and we're very excited about that. We have our raffle tickets that you all probably know about. We're selling those throughout the building, so check with your building reps if you would like to buy a raffle ticket, and the prize is $1,000 cash, and that's thanks to Lou Griffin. And our theme this year is the 19th hole. So it is going to be a very casual theme at Jefferson Country Club. Again, February the 25th. Wear your golf attire, maybe pair up with people and wear the same outfit as the other person, do something zany. We'll have a great time. Don't wear a formal, don't do that. It's going to be casual and fun. We'll also have games there that we'll be playing, and we have 2 former middle school East teachers that are creating this game for us. So it's going to be a lot of fun with the leaderboard. It'll be a golf game. And of course, we're going to have our wine poll, which we have every year. And we're going to be collecting wine, $25 donations, and $25 gift card donations at our happy hour, which is January the 27th. And that's going to be from 6 to 8, also at Jefferson Country Club. So entry to the happy hour is $25, wine, gift card, or cash or check. And we'll provide you with some yummy appetizers and a lot of fun there too. At the gala, we'll have the Hairy Buffaloes that will be performing. They performed last year. They did a great job. There's a lot of Gahanna connections in the Hairy Buffaloes too. So a lot of fun, and we're happy to have them back. And if you go to our website, which is GJEF, you can see all about these activities. You can see how to donate. You can see how to get involved as a volunteer as well. And we'll be having a sign up come out pretty soon for those who would like to help us at the gala. So for the gala, the reason we have this is so that we can raise money for our students. So with that, we have our Grants of Excellence open. That is to our teachers to apply for grants so that they can have more innovation in the classroom. And that will close at the end of January. So teachers out there, please apply to the Grants of Excellence. It's $1,000 per teacher or $2,500 for multiple grade levels. So we want to see those come rolling in while we're earning money for you all. So I think that's about it. Thank you.
Next, we have an update from Finance and Facility Committee from Mrs. Mooring.
On Tuesday, December 13th, we had a Finance and Facilities Committee meeting. On the agenda were 6 items. The first 2 deal with our Phase 2 construction. Our board owners rep from Turner Construction presented updates on each of the 4 major projects. And I think it was all pretty good, solid information, no major changes or delays or anything, so it was a good report. We also had a Phase 2 financial report update, and that is available as well on the website, right? Please. Yeah, it is. And then we had our investment report. So with the monies that were raised for the construction, obviously it's a 4-year construction period, so we're able to invest a bulk of those money and then pay them out over time. And we were lucky to place our debt in March 17th of 21, and that rate is for a little over 4%. So today that would be much higher. So we benefit from the loan side, and now we're starting to benefit from the investment side with the rise in interest rates. So we got a report from our investment manager, Jennifer, from Red Tree, who is managing that. And we also then got an update on our general fund revenues that are able to be invested from Scott of the Meter and Associates Group. I think everybody enjoyed getting that investment update. And then 4th, we had a presentation from Jill and on a request to add a preschool aid that is in tonight's agenda to approve. Our preschool is located on the 1st floor. We, as a public school district, are responsible for educating starting at age 4 if the child has been identified by several different agencies as needing remedial help at age 4. And that program is growing with leaps and bounds. I think in the last maybe two board agendas, we've had to add staff. And so that discussion took place, and that was followed by our year-to-date November 22 financials by our treasurer, Scott Gooding, and he will probably share some of that tonight. And then we had a board discussion on the potential of joining a 200 plus other districts in a lawsuit about the school voucher program and how its impact on public school funding and impact to students. So that is how we concluded our meeting.
Mrs. Mooring, any update from Policy and Governance Committee, Mr. Manley?
Hi, everybody. Policy Committee met December 1st, and we covered a wide array of policies, 17 if you're counting, and they covered different topics. We got right into safety, and we're updating a lot of policies to stay current with the times, following changes in regulations and such. And so safety is always primary on our mind. We covered weapons. We moved into district clubs and activities. We touched on career advising, athletics, preschool updates that have been mentioned, student residency, diabetes, health, of course, is always something that we're looking at and updating. We had a couple of new policies dealing with Board of Revision and aircraft systems. We went over the Fair Labor Standards Act updates and transportation. So that's policies are all listed on our website, and you can go to the website and review them. They are listed on our agenda before the meetings, this meeting. And if you ever have any questions, you can reach me through the website, Dion, or any board member. Thanks so much. That's my report.
Next, any update from Student Learning and Achievement Committee, Mrs. Coates?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. December 8th, we had our Student Learning and Achievement Committee meeting, and we talked about the BOLD process, which is Building, Organization, Learning, and Design. And this is teaching and learning connected to and inspired by our new high school design. I think the key takeaways is there's a 30-teacher cohort that has been a part of learning about this process, and it's really about connecting the dots between classes to career. There's a lot of collaboration and change management that was shared that the cohort was learning about, and really about the impact of flexibility on the learning and teaching process. There's 2 learning models that the teachers are currently exploring and testing out now, and that's inquiry-based learning and challenge-based learning, and we kind of look forward to hearing more about how those pilots are going. So we're preparing now for that new high school design. And then we also talked about trades, apprenticeships, and Eastland Fairfield programming. So we focused on our programs that we have, which are engineering and DECA is a marketing program. So it was really exciting to hear about those, as well as the 4 Eastland Fairfield career tech programs that are housed here in Gahanna, and that's architecture, bioscience, sports medicine, and the teaching professions. And then we kind of concluded our meeting with talking about work-based learning and some of the apprenticeships that are out there with Accenture, Abercrombie and Fitch, and some of those partnerships through the Junior Achievement partnership that we have. So it was a really informative and productive meeting. If you haven't listened to it or watched it, I really encourage you. So thank you.
Mrs. Coates? We are now on to the public participation section of the agenda. For anyone who has not been to our meetings before, public participation is not something that is required at a school board meeting, but something that we've chosen to add to all of our regular board meeting agendas. We have a public participation bylaw that we actually updated, I think last November was the last time we updated it. It is a time that like I said, we've chosen to add it to our agenda. We reserve it as space and time for our community to have an opportunity to come and address the board. The bylaw explains that it's not intended to be a period of dialogue, but it is specifically set aside for you, community members, to address issues that are related to the school district to the board. And that address is not to be directed to any one person in particular, but your address is to the board as a whole. It's not to the audience, it's not to the cameras, but it's to us. Sometimes you may bring up topics that do maybe sound like something that district staff might want to follow up with you on. And that's one of the reasons we ask you to fill out this form with your contact information so that if there's appropriate follow-up from district staff, they know how to reach you. We made a determination that we didn't put a time limit on the period of public participation because we think it's very important to have engagement with our community. But for each speaker, in order to be respectful of everybody's time, including our own need to get through voting items on our agenda, but all of your time as well, we set a 3-minute time limit for each individual speaker. We also say that that 3 minutes can be extended to a 5-minute period as long as you're not repeating yourselves. We have a timer up there that's actually set for the full 5 minutes so that we don't have to have a whole lot of interruption when you're speaking. But I will say that if we get past 3 minutes and there's repeating that's happening and not something new, that's when we would end the public participation. I think that's, and I guess I should say too, I know I already said it, but when you come up for public participation, it's up at this podium here. You don't need to please don't do anything to adjust the microphone. I have one slip right now for public participation. It looks like maybe there's another one coming. That's okay. I was just going to say, if there's anyone else that intended to address the board during public participation, you are still welcome to fill out a form. It's over at the desk over there. You can just hand it to Mr. Starkey and he'll make sure I get it. As long as we are still within the period of public participation, that's fine. So I'm going to grab this other slip while I call up. And we also, unlike the school and community reports and presentations where sometimes there's some, like I said, interaction, we clap, those kinds of things, that's not what public participation is for. So I would ask that everybody please be respectful, listen to the speaker, and then I'm going to move on to the next slip. So the first slip that I have is from Ezra Escudero? Escudero.
Thank you very much. Again, my name is Ezra Escudero, and I've been a Gahanna resident for over 15 years. My family's got businesses in the area, and I've worked in primarily state government and public policy most of my career, including service to the Taft, Strickland, and Kasich administrations over the years. And I just wanted to share an update with the board about the EdChoice lawsuit coalition. I know there was a presentation a while back by that coalition, and a number of events have happened since that are worth mentioning, especially considering the agenda, the resolution on the agenda tonight. First of all, I just wanted to mention that a study was just published this week by Dr. Stefan Levertu from The Ohio State University that indicates that the impact of EdChoice in Ohio, subject of the lawsuit, has actually resulted in improved district achievement where school districts have been impacted, reduced racial segregation in those districts, and no impact on district expenditures per pupil. Again, that hasn't been something that the board's been able to consider until just this week, so I wanted to make sure that's brought to the board's attention, and be happy to share electronic versions of that to anyone interested in reviewing that. But especially worth noting is that when it comes to the lawsuit coalition itself, it was just mentioned earlier that earlier this year about 200 schools were part of that coalition. I didn't think it was that many, but today there are just over 109 school districts that are part of the lawsuit. I originally thought it was only about an 11% decrease, but it could be as much as half. Question is, why are school districts backing away from their support, as in walking away or refusing to renew their support for that? The first point is that the lawsuit may very well fail. Where things stand in court, there's a motion to dismiss the lawsuit, and parties are waiting for the judge to issue a ruling. It may be prudent to wait until that decision's been made one way or the other, because the second point is our dollars here in Gahanna aren't going to influence the outcome of that ruling one way or the other, right? That's in the court's hands, and it'd be a shame to see even $15,000, which I understand is an estimate of what this will cost us here in Gahanna, that money gone to the coalition if the lawsuit gets dismissed. And a third point is that at least 13 of the school districts that have dropped has been as a direct result of community and grassroots activists mobilizing, asking their school boards to either withdraw their support or not renew moving forward. I have a sample of door hangers that have been shared in different communities around the state, and a website, lawsuitshurtkids.com, is up and running, building that statewide coalition, answering to some of the claims of the lawsuit coalition, and bringing parents' voices to bear. So I want to make sure I honor the time limit. Those are my comments to the board, and I'll try to hang out as long as possible if anyone wants to talk with me later. Thank you very much, and thank you for your service. Happy holidays and Happy New Year.
Thank you, Mr. Escudero. I don't know if you have a copy of the agenda, we do plan to have a discussion about that agenda item, but it's not until a little bit later, so, okay, thanks. The next slip that I have is from Jameel Jones.
Hello, good evening. So again, my name is Jameel Jones. I've been a Gahanna resident for actually 5 years. Had that anniversary a couple weeks ago. And mom to a third grader at Lincoln Elementary. And I'm here today to share a little appreciation and gratitude. Often at this time of year, as many of you, I'm left in the spirit of reflecting on the year that is getting ready to pass, and being in that spirit of kind of gratitude and appreciation. And as I was thinking about that, one of the things on my list that I am grateful for is this school board and all of you sitting at the table today. And I just wanted to take a moment to publicly share that with each of you. So from creating resolutions against House Bills 322, 327, and 616 earlier this year, to participating in the Stonewall Pride March for the first time, to speaking out against the Ohio Board of Education resolution that opposes protections for our LGBTQ+ students, and so many more things. Those are all just on the list of reasons why I'm so grateful to live in a community where the school board advocates for all students. And doing that especially in a time where the safety and belonging of our children is politicized and very divisive. So I wanted to just leave one last little word from Mr. Rogers, who said, when I was a boy and I would see scary things in the news, Mr. Rogers would say to his television neighbors, my mother would say to me, look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping. So thank you to each of you for being helpers in this scary time, and happy holidays and Happy New Year to each of you. Thank you.
We're not clapping. Thanks. Thank you. Although we appreciate the applause, we're going to stick to our bylaws for public participation. I don't have any other slips for public participation. Okay. Are there any additions, deletions, or recommended changes to tonight's agenda?
Yes, good evening, Madam President. I do have one deletion, and that is to letter G, number 1. If you would please remove Lori Wild's resignation, which would have been effective tomorrow, from the agenda. I also do have one slight change, please. Letter H, number 2, under policies. Policy 7440, we are, the way that policy title should read, instead of small unmanned aircraft, it should be changed to small unpiloted aircraft. And those changes have been made to the policy.
Thank you, Dr. Deagle. Is there a motion to amend the agenda to reflect the recommended changes, the first one being on page 6 under letter G1, and the second one being on page 13 to the name of policy number 7440.03?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Manley. Is there a second? Thank you, Mrs. Coates. Any discussion about making those changes? Okay. Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll, please?
Waring,
Yes.
Mrs. Pickle Antonio,
Yes.
Mrs. Coates,
Yes.
Mrs. Horn,
Yes.
Mr. Manley.
Yes.
Motion carried.
And then is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Horn. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Mooring. Any discussion of that? Mr. Gooding, did I give you enough time to?
We're good.
Okay. Can you call the roll one more time, please?
Mrs. Mooring,
Yes.
Mrs. Pickle Antonio,
Yes.
Mrs. Coates,
Yes.
Mrs. Horn,
Yes.
Mr. Manley. Motion carried.
Thanks. We are on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Deagle?
Good evening again. Been a busy month, as I'm sure I know it has been for all of you as well. Just wanted to start by recognizing that we had a successful holiday hoopla. Was that last week, I think? Last week at our high school. That is a fundraiser for our community art program, and our swag program assists in that fundraiser. And right now they're preparing to create and install some new murals under the bridge and along Creekside. So we're excited for those installations as they become available. And then they'll move into getting ready for our urban arts, which urban arts, I guess, is how we say it in Gahanna, right? We kind of roll that together, fair this spring. So that was a really great community event, and the Gahanna Barkery was there selling their biscuits. They had been through, I think, what I tell you, Jill, 160 bags of dog biscuits, so that's still a really great program for our students. And the Beekeeping Club was there as well. On this evening's agenda, you do have the program of studies that is set forth for your approval. And I just wanted to draw everyone's attention to that, because when that program of studies is pending your adoption this evening, when it is presented to our students at the high school, we're also going to go ahead and put that in our Friday update come January, and draw our community's attention to it so that our younger families can see the programming that we offer at our high school and begin to think about that and talk about that with their students, and maybe even ask questions of their neighbors if their own children have been through some of those programs. So we're excited about that recommendation from Mrs. Mooring to promote that program of studies more. I do have something I would like to draw your attention to, a bit of a concern of mine. We had a job fair at Ohio State on Monday that our Human Resources Department went to. They attended that job fair, and they learned from the College of Education that those graduates in particularly primary education are down by half of what they have been in the past. So a typical graduating class for primary educators has been about 150 students. They're anticipating this year only about 60 to 65. I attended our Central Ohio Superintendent's meeting this week, where we had a member of the Department of Education asking for what could the Department of Education be focusing on in coming months, and I did illuminate this as one of our primary concerns. We really need our young individuals who are driven by doing altruistic, meaningful work to consider a career in education. And so I hope you will help me spread the good news of education. Along the same lines, we are beginning to have our staffing conversations. We met with our principals today, and our Human Resources Department had really planned well for this conversation. We reviewed some staffing requests from buildings and from departments and identified data to support those requests so that we can ensure that we are making decisions about hiring that are targeted to meet the needs that we know we have in our district and fall in line with our 5-year forecast and are fiscally responsible. And our principals walked through some exercises today where it was the first time, is my understanding, that we were collaborative in our conversation, where elementary principals came together and said, okay, we have this many positions in the budget, but we have this many asks. How do we prioritize those asks? What can we do differently that maybe can take care of this need in a way other than hiring? Is there an opportunity to do that? And so it was the start of a collaborative conversation, and just really appreciate our entire cabinet team for hearing my vision for that and walking ahead to make sure that that's a vision that goes forward. So that's my report for this evening.
Next, we have a report from our Assistant Superintendent, Mrs. Elliott.
I just have one thing this evening. Just wanted to put on everyone's radar that when we come back from winter break, we do have a professional development day with our staff, and we will be starting the morning with choice sessions. We have 19 choice sessions that our staff is able to choose from, and we're excited because those sessions are being led by our district experts. We have 29 of our certified staff members that have volunteered to lead sessions, as well as many of our administrative team from the Curriculum and Special Education Department. And then following the choice sessions, we will come together as a full district to have some safety discussions. Dr. Deagle and Chief Spence are going to address the group, and then we'll break up into building groups to just think through different safety scenarios. So we are looking forward to that time with our staff after the new year.
Thank you, Mrs. Elliott. Next, we have a report, a communication report from Mr. Starkey.
Good evening, everybody. The first thing I wanted to do tonight was bring attention to our new fly-through video for the high school, narrated by our assistant superintendent. It's a great 10-minute view of what we're going to be looking at as it comes out of the ground and is constructed over the next couple years. So definitely exciting things coming, and that is the first look at what we have ahead. Last meeting, you'll recall, I talked a lot about social media numbers, and so I don't want to dive that deeply into social media numbers this month, but I did want to point out our top 3 social media posts on Facebook for the month of December so far, so 15 days in. Our post, the most amount of impressions, it's fitting that we honored musicians tonight, was a congratulations. We had a junior in our band who participated in the Macy's Thanksgiving Parade. And so that had 4,412 impressions. Behind that was pictures from our app showcase from this Monday. Students in our computer and mobile applications class, it was sort of their final projects to display the applications that they've built in class. So that was really great to see on Monday. And then the third thing was a shared post from our music boosters for their holiday concert posts. So those were our top 3 posts on Facebook this week. Another update in terms of rebranding. I know I've talked to you, seems like every month about it now. It's a process that we're continuing through. DLR has come back. They have our first round of logos. We have not seen them yet. They won't allow me to get a sneak peek, unfortunately, but we are waiting until our whole steering committee can come back together right after winter break, and all of us can kind of dive in and look. And then from there, our steering committee will sort of fine-tune and whittle down those options, and then we'll get our focus groups involved and whittle down from there. The final thing I have is an update, or I guess it's not an update, it's more of a notice, similar to last month's meeting. We have winter break starting on Monday. Tomorrow is our last day of school for the 2022 calendar. We will welcome our staff back on January 3rd and welcome our students back on January 4th. And that is all I have tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Starkey. Next, we've got a report from our treasurer, Mr. Gooding.
All right. Thank you. Daphne, thank you for the recap of the Finance and Facility Committee meeting. There are 6 items on the agenda for tonight. Feedback there. The first is the financial report for the month of November 2022. We have 5 appropriation adjustments. You'll see Fund 018, which is our public school support. This is for Chapel Field, the amount of $6,000. 019, our local grants. We received a reading recovery grant in the amount of $3,000. Student managed activity, we have $11,000 in adjustments here for a combination of the Lions Locker program, the HOSA program, and middle school robotics at, I believe, Middle School East. We have district managed activity. This is for the ski club at the high school in the amount of $500. And then there is a miscellaneous federal grants adjustment of $1,157,304 for the Ohio K-12 School Safety Grant, as well as the Emergency Connectivity Fund that we received. There is a fund-to-fund transfer that we'll have here for debt payments for non-voted debt issues that were initiated in 2013 and 15, as well as a refinancing of those. So that is moving the money from the general fund to the debt service fund so we can make that payment. Every year we do advances on our tax settlements, so this is giving, I'll send this to the county auditor this evening. It's queued up in my email ready to go, so that when the taxes go out, they'll start receiving those in January. We want to make sure that the money that they collect on our behalf gets in our account as quickly as we can. I think the first settlement, the first advance settlement is scheduled for January 11th, and then then those come in every week, so I'm requesting it every week until the settlement is done, so that's what this resolution here is. The fifth item is establishing the HOSA program at the high school. This is the Health Occupation Students of America. We had individual ones that were trying to pull them all together into one program, so that's what this is doing here. And then we have donations. And Dion, I hope you like the format of this. It's a little bit different. I think we took some of the advice that you had last meeting. So if there are items on here that are similar, we grouped them and did a subtotal so you could see that right away. For example, Fill My Tummy Fund and the Lions Locker, so you can see the subtotals by group so that you don't have to go through and total this up during the meeting. It'll just jump off the page there for you as well. On the November financial report, we talked through the items we typically cover high level, the highlights of three primary funds: the general fund, the permanent improvement fund, as well as the bond issue. Revenues in the general fund, we received $1.4 million. Daphne alluded to interest rates, so I'm going to talk about it here because it impacts the other funds as well. Because in that construction fund, when we did the bond issue and sold the bonds in March of 21, I think the interest rate was 0.02. We want to round it down. It's 0. So now with everything that's changed, interest rates are great. The Fed's just increased it 50 basis points this week. So we're now over 4%. That's a great. I love presenting numbers here that we didn't think we were going to get at that point. So we call those out. So in the general fund, we received $81,000 in interest earnings. We spent just over $9.1 million for the month, and we have got a cash balance in the general fund of just over $38.3 million. On the PI fund, we had over $23,000 in interest earnings. The only payment that we had out of the PI fund, the majority of that was for the tax anticipation note that we did. That was a financing tool that we used to borrow money up front to fund some projects that we needed to do. So you can borrow 50% of what what you're estimated to bring in over 10 years, but you have to pay that back, plus some interest. So this is making that payment. We're close. We pay that off in 2024, so we can see the light at the end of the tunnel to do that. But the money that comes in on an annual basis stays in that fund, so then we will have more money available at that point to invest in the permanent improvement processes and programs that we need, so the repairs and the renovations to our facilities that we need to do. Ending cash balance is just under $7.2 million for the month in the PI fund. The construction fund, interest earnings were just over $39,000. We spent $6.7 million, and we talked about the projects and the breakdown of those where those are. I'm going to work with Mr. Starkey and make sure that we get those on the Phase 2 website as well. I know next calendar year coming up, those reports will be much more readily available than they've been, so we're very, very excited about that. On the 5-year forecast piece, when we look at that and look at how the funds have come in versus what we thought, the property taxes and state foundation were right on track. Our other revenue's up a little bit. So overall, it's great when revenue's up. On the expense side, our personnel cost, we're trending under by 3.22%. We made some adjustments for some ESSER funding corrections that we made in July, so that's a little lower than what we thought. We're going to start to close that variance up a little bit as we move forward. Total expenses for the month were trending under 2.96%, so we're doing really well. Bottom line is our cash is up $4.6 million from where we thought we would be at that point. That's a great thing. Revenue's up, expenses down, cash up. So we're in a really great place. Any questions?
Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Gooding. If there is not an objection to taking items number 1 through 6 together under letter E, is there a motion to approve items number 1 through 6 under letter E, financial business?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Mooring. Is there a second? Thank you, Mrs. Horn. Any discussion? As always, I think, thank you to, were you about to say something? Just want to say thank you to all of the individuals and groups and businesses, it looks like, that made donations this year. I guess I just want to in particular point out and say thank you to our communications team for pushing the need for both the Fill My Tummy Fund and the opportunity to contribute toward the 8th grade trip to DC. That's something new for the district, that we've been able to offer opportunities to fundraise to cover the cost for students. So it's new that it's going to be a district-sponsored trip. So I think it's a great opportunity for kids. I just want to say thank you for communicating to our community that those are 2 opportunities to make contributions. And thank you to everybody for all of the donations. Mrs. Mooring, were you going to say something? Sorry.
My comment was, I'm glad to see that the future health professional groups are coalescing, and because if a student is inspired by joining a club, our healthcare world needs many, many good professionals. So I'm glad to see that this is taking place at the high school. And they can be part of your fair, Blake.
Say the same thing, Daphne. There's still staffing shortages, and I don't think students realize the number of career paths there are in the healthcare world. So I'm excited that they're going to get that opportunity to explore and talk about that.
Yeah, and I have one more thing. I just want to send special appreciation to OPSI for their donation. It's really nice to see a union give back, and you donate to so many awesome projects, and including college scholarships. So thank you.
Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll, please?
I can. Can I chime in one more thing real quick before I
Sure.
do that? I don't know if Joan knows this, but I do want to publicly thank Mr. Campbell for inviting me over to the high school to talk to the accounting students about what a school treasurer does. I thought it was pretty successful. I didn't lose anybody to sleep, so that was a big thing. But it was a great opportunity to get in front of them and talk about what we do, because I know at that age, even though I'm doing it now, I didn't know what a school treasurer was. I knew they were a signature on my diploma, and that was about it. So it's just a great opportunity, and I
It's a
really
great
look forward
career
to that.
path,
It was
right?
wonderful. I was selling it. That was the main thing. I was like,
Did you do that?
we're looking for some student interns. Come on over.
Did you do that activity?
No,
Oh, okay.
but we talked about that. Though.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Manley? Yes. Mrs. Mooring?
Yes.
Mrs. Pickle Antonio? Mrs. Coates?
Yes.
Mrs. Horn? Motion carried.
We are on page 5, educational pupil programs and services, and unless there is an objection to taking those 3 items together, is there a motion to approve items number 1 through 3 under letter F? A motion first. Thank you, Mrs. Horn, and I think there's a second from Mrs. Coates. Now we can have discussion if there's any discussion.
The program of studies, when I joined the board 7 years ago, I did a little survey of other districts our size, and just to see, we have an incredibly robust program of studies, the opportunities for our students, and I think it's a little known secret that shouldn't be a little known secret. So if you have the opportunity, it is available online, the current one, but the new one will be out in January. Just take a look at the depth and breadth of classes offered, and 190 different classes, right? That's incredible. So I just would like to recognize the staff at the high school who continue to push themselves to learn new programming and then the ability to teach, as well as the administration for inspiring that work.
Mrs. Mooring, any additional discussion? Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Horn? Mr. Manley?
Yes.
Mrs. Mooring?
Yes.
Mrs. Pickle Antonio?
You, I don't know. Yes.
Mrs. Coates?
Yes.
Motion carried.
We are on letter G on page 6. There are 23 items for action under human resources. If there's not, there are still 23. If there's not an objection to taking those 23 items together, is there a motion to approve items number 1 through 23 under letter H, or G, excuse me.
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Mooring. Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Manley. Any discussion about those items?
Human Resources Department felt like they were going to have a little break in the fall, but it never really came, did it?
You too. Lots of hard work from the Human Resources Department and anybody else who participated in interviews or any of the other things related to making those 23 action items happen. It's a lot of work. Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Coates?
Yes.
Mrs. Horn?
Yes.
Mr. Manley?
Yes.
Mrs. Mooring?
Yes.
Mrs. Pickle Antonio?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. There are 8 items for action under general business. Unless there is an objection to taking those 8 items together, is there a motion to approve items number 1 through 8 under letter H? Manley, is there a second? Thank you, Mrs. Horn. Any discussion about any of these items? Let's start with, is there any discussion about items number 1 through 7? Let's start with that.
President Pickle Antonio, I had some questions earlier about the number 7, and I just, for clarity, we're in the second year of a 2-year contract with this workers' compensation, and it's an assessment, essentially a stop-loss concept for workers' comp, like we would have for medical insurance. We're self-insured up to $400,000, and then this insurance kicks in over that. So it would be nice, I think, if we're doing 2-year contracts, that's in here, because if somebody 4 years down the road is looking for a contract, a 1-year contract, they're not going to find it, right? Because it actually started January 1 of 22. So maybe we can, and I also think it might be time to shop our workers' comp insurance. I don't know how often that's done, but I think as we did with the health insurance and the property and casualty, just to keep understanding what the market is, and different insurers have different funding and sources and strengths. So just from a fiscally responsible, maybe next year we could, or the next contract time frame, we could do a little survey to see if we're in the money.
Mrs. Mooring, any additional discussion about items number 1 through 7? Okay, then we will talk about item number 8. And just as a, I guess, reminder to all of us, I know we kind of had this reminder on Tuesday when we talked about this in Finance Committee, but the board initially heard a presentation from the coalition at our regular board meeting in April. And I think that there were some follow-up questions, some information that we didn't get from that presentation, because it was information that we were looking for specific to our school district. And so we had some of that follow-up information last night. If I could, I guess, turn it over to you, Mr. Gooding, to recap that follow-up information. And then I know I have some comments that I'd like to make, but I don't know if anyone else does either.
I've got that here for you because this is the financial piece of it. Because one of the questions that we talked about, one of the topics was how much money do we currently receive per student? So I actually pulled from the state, yes, through our foundation formula. So I went back to the most recent school funding report. This is from December 9th. We receive $13,462,766.36 in total state support, or what we call foundation funding, before deductions and transfers are out for retirement, the county ESC, things like that. So we took that number, divided it by the ADM count of 7,747.08 students, and therefore it generates $1,737.79 per student. That's what we receive from the state through the foundation formula. The other piece, and I think one of the speakers did mention this with the cost. There was a question about the cost to join this. The fees from the coalition is $2 per ADM. Again, $2 times that 7,748.08. The fees for the year would be $15,496.16. And again, we could choose each year if we wanted to continue that or not after speaking with Mr. Phyllis. The other piece that was discussed as part of the presentation that they had given were some of the costs with the privatization piece of the bill that they were looking at. Because we went back and did look at the ed choice piece and how that would impact us. So this is really, we were looking at this more from protecting our resources on a going forward basis, because some of the pieces that were in there was allocating $7,500 per student for high school vouchers. For elementary students, it was $5,500 per student. There's the cap on the vouchers was removed, so there's the unlimited potential that more funds could go out because there is no limit on that. Tuition tax credit, $750 per student. Homeschool tax credit, $250 per student. There's a subsidy payment in there for parents for $500. Talks about siblings and foster children eligibility. And the issue that the coalition brought up is that it also pays for private school costs for families who never enrolled or even intended to enroll in the public school setting. So those are some of the things that they have brought up. But I think those were the questions that we had talked about on Tuesday.
Mr. Gooding, like I said, I do have, I guess, some of my own comments, but I don't know if anybody else has comments. Sure.
If that's
Yep.
okay before we move to comments.
For sure.
So I just want to make sure I'm understanding because the numbers seem so crazy to me. And so I just want to make sure I'm digesting it the right way, assessing. So you're saying like currently we get $1,500 from the state, $1,700 from the state, but we could lose $7,500 per high school student and $5,500 per elementary. Okay.
I thought that was going up, or it was projected to be raised to $7,500 for elementary through, or K through 8 and high school.
This was the information that we had when we're looking. I mean, there are things that could constantly changing in legislation, so we're monitoring that. But this was information that we received that was part of that.
Okay, well, I guess I just wanted to give a little bit more context, if that's okay. So one of the reasons that we're talking about this now, like I said, we did start this conversation in April. There were some additional questions that we had that we were waiting to get information about. But one of the other reasons I think that, I guess from my perspective, that we're talking about it again now is that in this General Assembly, there were actually two bills that were introduced that would have significantly expanded the voucher program as Mr. Gooding described, and it would have expanded the voucher program to remove any qualifications really to receive vouchers. Those two bills. We talked about them a little bit in Finance Committee on Tuesday, but those bills will terminate with this General Assembly. But as I said on Tuesday, both the incoming House Speaker and the incoming Senate President, or ongoing Senate President, because that one won't be a change, have said that this particular legislation is a very high priority. In fact, the incoming House Speaker has been a sponsor on for some of this specific type of legislation, and most people are speculating that that new approach to vouchers will be part of the budget bill this cycle. And I guess so that's why we're talking about this now. I guess I also wanted to make just a couple comments. Additional comments. One about the lawsuit and where it stands right now. So the lawsuit was filed in Franklin County Common Pleas Court. It is currently in front of Judge Jiza Page, and there is a motion to dismiss that she heard arguments on, I think, a couple weeks ago or about a month ago. Maybe my sense of time is totally off, but the decision she has not yet issued a decision on that motion to dismiss. And I'm sure there are lots of people who have lots of feelings about how she might rule, but that decision has not yet come out. I would also, I guess I wanted to say, there was an article in the Dispatch the other day related to this study that one of our speakers during public participation talked about. So there was a study that was commissioned by the Fordham Institute. It was conducted by some professors at Ohio State. That study did conclude that there was no financial impact to school districts from the current voucher pilot program, which is not what is being contemplated by the General Assembly. I actually have read the study, and the other thing that I want to say related to that study is that it makes it clear that it is both looking at the current voucher program and not the program that's being proposed in legislation, but also with regard to the current voucher program, it does not conclude that there is not a decrease in state funding. Instead, what it concludes is that there is no impact on a local community's ability to raise local tax dollars through local levies. So that study doesn't say that there's not a decrease to the amount of funding that a district might receive from the state, but it says that those districts so far have been able to raise local tax dollars from local community members through local levies to make up for any shortfall from state funding. So those were the comments that I had. I don't know if anybody else had anything that they wanted to talk about related to the resolution.
I typed mine up because I get so emotionally charged by this concept. And before I start into that, when our superintendent was sharing that people are dropping out of the education school and are second guessing a career as a teacher, it's pretty clear to me, my kids see it, right? I have a 22 and a 24-year-old. They wouldn't go into education with the attacks on educators that have been occurring and the instability of public education in Ohio. So I believe there's probably a direct correlation to what is Ohio State's reporting, and it breaks my heart because teaching has to be one of the most rewarding careers a person could have, right? And we are doing the darndest to take it out as an option for these kids. So I am firmly in support of joining the other districts to fight for what is right for the students of our state. What is most upsetting to me about the conversation of the group of state legislators that are pushing the charter school movement is that the focus is on state dollars or the financial interest only, not the quality or the quantity of the options for the students. So this would lead one to believe that the for-profit operators and those that are highly desirous of eliminating the separation of church and state for education only, and that those students needing special education or come from families of poverty, this movement is especially detrimental. I grew up in a very poor southern county in Ohio, and I can only imagine they receive well more than probably $7,500 per student, right, to fund their education down there. And I can only imagine the devastation to the school district if this comes to pass. I mean, we are a district that's wealthy, right? And I think I get into that, but think about charter schools aren't required to provide special education, right? There aren't all families that have parents that have the time, energy, or understanding about advocating for their students. So who are we hurting the most? And that's what is driving my decision. So I want to consider these points, and I have verified them in two different sources. So the average charter school has a lower four-year graduation rate than all but one public school in Ohio. Overall, test scores are consistently higher in Ohio's public schools compared to charter schools and private schools that accept state vouchers. Public schools are much more efficient. Charters spend 2 times the dollars on administrative costs than public schools. So what that means is more dollars in public schools go to student programming, our 190 classes that we can offer. And from a financial perspective, which is near and dear to my heart, the state has refused for over 30 years to properly fund education, even though the legislators and governors know that an educated workforce is vital to attract and retain businesses in our state. Think about the conversation when Intel was announced a few months ago. Why did they come? They kept touting the schools and the colleges and our educated workforce. Millions and billions are given to businesses that send their profits out of the state. What is missing in their thinking that education could be one of the best investments for economic and social stability? And I'm going to repeat some numbers, but I have it in here for context. Today, our district receives $1,738 per student in state funding. Yet they're proposing to find a way to give each student's family $7,500 in voucher form. If our district was receiving $7,500 per student in increased revenue, that would be so impactful that our property owners in Gahanna wouldn't have a levy in the foreseeable future. So this leads me to one of the fundamental problems with the proposed voucher legislation. State funding of education is unique to each district based on the convoluted formula that the legislators approved. For private school owners and religious institutions, those the latter paying no tax into the system, they will now receive, in our case, 4 times what an efficient and successful school district is receiving from the state. We are considered a wealthy district with our residents paying 63% of our budget in property tax. For poor districts in the state, the loss of $70,500 or more per student could be catastrophic. So the legislation really puts small, many times rural, agricultural districts in financial risk. When you couple this legislation with the destruction of the Ohio Department of Education and the legislation that defines and degrades groups of people in our state, are we moving forward or are we taking a giant step backward? Joining the lawsuit is needed by our district in order to protect the state funding dollars that we do receive now, and more importantly, to protect the students of our district, especially the special ed.
Thank you, Mrs. Mooring. Any additional discussion? Yes, Mr. Manley?
Just real short, I I completely agree, and I think that the 15,000, if you take one student, one high school student, and one middle school student, there's the 15,000 right there. And when we're thinking long term, you're right. Like, we have a lot of privilege, and as Ohioans, I believe in investing for the long term and for our neighbors and pulling together. When they're stronger, we're stronger, and that's where I'm coming from in that regard. I mean, fiscally, it's an investment, and I read the article in the Dispatch and other articles and articles about districts that are being affected, and I agree completely with where are we putting our money. As a school board member, I've learned so much in regards to the standards that our professionals are held to, and it seems like every time we turn a corner, in my perspective, it looks like they're making it harder and harder, and with less and less resources. While charter schools, it seems, have a completely different standard, and that is unnerving to me. I don't understand how it can be like that. The imbalance in the finances and the standards. So that's a couple of my points. Thank you.
Any additional discussion?
I think, Daphne, what you said mirrors my thoughts and said very beautifully, so thank you for that. I think the only thing I want to add is that, I took an oath when I was elected to this office to uphold the Constitution of both the state of Ohio and the United States, and I do feel that the actions being taken by some of our legislators do not show that they are upholding their same oath. So I feel like I would not be doing my service if I did not take action against those I feel who are not upholding their oath.
Want to say something, Mrs. Horn?
I agree with everything that's been said by my colleagues, and I think from a financial standpoint, $15,000 for 1 year is a small part to pay in order to protect what the future is, and I think that we have to do all we can to make sure that we are protecting our students and our finances as a district. So that was the only thing I wanted to add.
Anything else? Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Piccolo Antonio?
Yes.
Mrs. Coates? Yes. Mrs. Horn?
Yes.
Mr. Manley?
Yes.
Mrs. Mooring? Motion carried.
Thank you, Mr. Gooding. We are on board reports and discussions. I do have a legislative update. The period of time that we've been in the Ohio legislature, I've talked about this before. It's called lame duck. It's the period between election day and the end of the General Assembly. Lame duck officially ended this morning after a record-long session that lasted until around 6 a.m. The Ohio Senate recessed, I think, at 5:45 a.m. and the Ohio House at 6:15 a.m., meeting that they started at about, 8 or 8:30 was when the first committee meeting was yesterday. And I did just want to talk about a couple of the things. First, last month I talked about substitute Senate Bill 178. I just wanted to give an update on that. That piece of legislation ended up passing out of the Senate and out of the House. Oh, and then the House Primary and Secondary took it up. I'm talking too fast, sorry. The House Primary and Secondary Committee took it up as a fast-tracked priority this week. So initially the House Primary and Secondary Committee had it scheduled for committee hearings, I think 2 or 3 days this week, and then started for a vote on Wednesday that was yesterday. They did hear some testimony in committee. They had lots of discussion with those who were able to come and testify. The committee was determined to get 178 to the House floor last night, and they did. However, around 10:30 p.m. last night, the Senate was in session and they amended House Bill 151 to incorporate substitute Senate Bill 178. House Bill 151 is a piece of legislation that I have also talked about before. It's a bill that began related to mentorship for new teachers, but it ended up picking up some language regarding banning students who are transgender girls from competing in women's sports. So like I said, at 10:30 last night, the Senate essentially combined those two pieces of legislation. And then around 2:30 this morning, the House voted 46 to 41 to not concur in the Senate's amendments. So because the House had already passed 151 in a prior session, what was in front of them was a vote to concur. That needs more than just a majority. So they did not receive the vote threshold to concur in the amendments. And so I guess just the short version of that is that for now, both pieces of legislation will terminate with the end of this General Assembly. However, both of those issues, or not just both, but all of the issues contained in those pieces of legislation are likely to come back in the next General Assembly. Just really briefly, I will give a couple other things that were voted out of both the House and the Senate and sent to the governor for signature that do impact public education. So first is House Bill 458. That is a bill that eliminates the August election, changes some election laws and voter ID requirements. I'm not going to go in depth into these bills, but I just want to mention them because they are related to, they do impact us. Second is Senate Bill 33. That is a piece of legislation that deals with community reinvestment areas. So there was a piece of legislation, it was House Bill 123. It was ultimately amended into Senate Bill 33. It modifies the 25-year law governing CRAs, community reinvestment areas, by raising the threshold requiring school board approval from 50% to 75%. Nope. Next is House Bill 66. This is a bill that has to do with property tax exemptions and authorization for combined renewal levy. So the Senate Ways and Means Committee amended House Bill 66 to include the authority to combine into one ballot question the renewal of an emergency property tax levy and combination income and property tax levy. So under current law, school district can renew an emergency property tax levy or may renew a combination income and property tax levy, but either renewal has to be submitted to voters as a separate question on the ballot. This legislation would allow it to be combined. And then last from the General Assembly is a bill from, actually, I think our state representative, Mary Lightbody, House Bill 554. This is related to temporary educator licenses. It's a bill that will require the State Board of Education to issue temporary educator licenses with applicants who have expired professional teacher certificates and professional educator licenses. There was also an amendment that was added related to children of military families participating in College Credit Plus and an expansion of the eligibility of special education funding for students who have developmental delays. That bill, amended bill, passed out of both chambers Wednesday evening. So I guess I'll end that legislative update with a good one. The legislature, they do have two as needed sessions on the calendar still for December, but all indicators, I haven't gone back to check, but the last I heard, they are not planning to use those as needed sessions. They will be on winter break until January 3rd. And then finally, the State Board of Education met this week, Monday and Tuesday. On Tuesday, the State Board of Education voted 10-7 with one state board member absent, one state board member abstaining to pass an amended version of a resolution in opposition to proposed regulations regarding Title IX. That's it from me as a legislative update. Anything from Eastland Fairfield, Mr. Manley?
Matt is our representative, Matt Campbell, and I have not received a report, so nothing to report today.
Anything from Gahanna Parks and Rec, Mrs. Horn?
We met last night and actually just received an update on the strategic plan, and that is in progress still for Parks and Rec, and they'll be giving, I believe, an update in January to the steering committee.
Horn. Anything as our local government liaison, Mrs. Mooring?
I will just update the board. We, were asked by the city to renegotiate the compensation agreement, and we replied to the city in early November, and we haven't heard any response. So just to give you that status update.
Thank you, Mrs. Mooring. Anything else from Gahanna Jefferson Education Foundation, Mrs. Coates?
We had a meeting Monday, but Diana really covered all the points I was going to make, and I'm just glad that the full board will be at the gala, so happy to report that.
Thank you, Mrs. Coates. Anything from Insurance Committee, Mrs. Horn?
We did not have a meeting this past month, and I believe we're looking to get a meeting on the calendar for sometime in January in the new year.
Thanks, Mrs. Horn. Any other items from board members?
Point out our quality profile that was available for you all to pick up. This is a great, kudos to Eric and Judy for putting this amazing document together, but it gives a wonderful summary of some of the programming and just current pictures and numbers of what happens in our district. So I hope you pick one up on the way out.
Go ahead.
I just want to wish all of our educators, administrators, staff, everyone that works in our district a wonderful winter break. They deserve this break, and I hope they enjoy it and tune into their resilience. And just a big thank you.
And just want to say the same. Have a great break. You deserve it. Counting down the days. And, at the end of my first year as a board member, I'm just so eternally grateful to everyone. I wouldn't be here without my allies and friends and supporters and people that believed in me. And people ask me all the time, why did you do it? Like, how is it? Are you glad? And, we have those conversations because it's crazy. And these are crazy times, but I've said right from the start, just like when I moved to Gahanna, I said I can see why people don't leave. Really, I'm around amazing people every single day, and I'm so grateful for that. And I have to say, even during the hard issues that are gut-wrenching and life-threatening, I really believe that the majority of people we're getting there, and change is happening, and it's a long road, but we're sticking with, and I stuck by people that believed in me, and we stick together, we can do anything, and I really believe we're going there, and we're getting there, and it's hard, and it's long, but it's so worth it, and so don't ever give up.
Thanks, Mr. Manley. Anything
Thank you.
else? Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn? Moved. Thank you, Mrs. Horn. Is there a second?
A second.
Thanks, Mrs. Mooring. Any discussion about that? Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Mooring? Mrs. Pickle Antonio?
Yes.
Mrs. Coates?
Yes.
Mrs. Horn? Mr. Manley?
Yes.
Motion carried.
It is 8:15, and we're adjourned.